on the heels of Second Peter. And I'm doing those two books back to back because there's a lot of similarities between what the writer's asking us to do as Christians and warnings about dangers that can creep into the church and creep into our lives in the way of like false teachers, false teaching, stuff like that. The books are actually very similar. So last week, what did we talk about last week? Who is Jude? Can somebody answer that? Who's Jude?
He's a servant.
He identifies himself as a servant, yeah, of Jesus. What else? What else do we know about him? It's a brother of James, half brother of Jesus, right? So that's pretty much the upfront information that we have about Jude. What else did we learn about him? Did the family always believe in Jesus, like Messiah Jesus? No, they didn't. We looked at some scripture. We looked at some scripture last week where there was definitely some doubt in the family's mind about what Jesus was doing. I think his immediate family probably thought he was crazy when he first got going with his ministry. I think his mom probably thought he was going to starve to death and feed everybody else. But anyhow, there wasn't always the belief in Lord Jesus, right? You had half brother Jesus, you had the family, but I could just think about that in your house, right? You'd have a hard time with that too, probably. If your brother or sister just start doing all this crazy stuff, what are you doing? Anyhow, I can see how that plays out in family, but somehow, some way, from the household of Jesus, right, growing up with him, to when he wrote the book of Jude, right, he had his own encounter with Jesus. That's the thing. So you have a brother who doubted Jesus, but now you have a writer writing an epistle who's a strong believer in Jesus. That in his writing that he left to us is urging us to stand up for the faith, for the gospel, right? So whatever happened to Jude, whenever his conversion happened, like it's real, like it's strong, and he wants other people to believe in the message. And then I think that's about all we did last week. Today we're going to try to do verses 5 through 15. We'll see how we're doing with time. I'd like to have a little fun with our survey again if we have time, but we'll see. If we do that again, the smartphone survey thing, if you can't figure it out, just raise your hand, because half the people can figure it out and half of us can't, and we can help somebody out really quick. But anyhow, it's one of those things I want to get in the habit of using so we can use it for teaching. Just real simple outline of Jude. Verses 1 through 4, you basically have the introduction of Jude. He tells us, and we're going to read it in a minute, but he tells us he wanted to write about salvation, but he felt compelled to write about contending, standing up for your faith. That's you can literally see the purpose of the book in the very first couple of verses. Like, I'm urging you to contend for the faith. That's Jude's purpose in writing. He goes on a long discourse about false teachers and false leaders and stuff of that nature. Very much like Peter did in 2 Peter. So when you see multiple writers warning of the same thing, it's something in the epistles I think we should take seriously. And then verses 20 through 25, which we'll get to next week, you can kind of see expectations for the church moving forward. All right, we want you to stand up for your faith. Here's all these false teachers. What now? What do you do with all that? So Jude will touch on that at the end. One of the things that sticks out to me about Jude is that when we talk about like false teachers and false leaders and stuff of that nature amongst ourselves, a lot of times we talk about misinterpretation of Bible verses and stuff like that. Like, of course, so-and-so didn't get something right. Jude focuses on like how you're living, like how are people living, the conduct of their lives. That's how Jude says you can see false leaders and false teachers. What are they doing with their life? Are they doing these things that God wants to do, or are they complete opposite? I think that's probably a good. I think it's probably a good judge of things. All right. So what I want to do is read verses 1 through 15, and then we'll talk about a few things. So can I get a few readers? Get some people reading today. Get a few readers, and we'll read through the first 15 verses of Jude, and then we'll talk about it. Who wants to read first? All right. Yeah, go ahead, John. Yeah, just you can the verses on the screen here. 1 through 4, 1 through 3. It looks like.
Jude, a servant of Jesus Christ and the brother of James, to those who have been called, who are loved in God the Father and kept for Jesus Christ. Mercy, peace, and love be yours in abundance. Dear friends, although I was very eager to write to you about the salvation we share, I felt compelled to write to urge you to contend for the faith that was once for all entrusted to God's holy people.
Yeah. All right, next one. Lucky you just get verse 4.
For certain men have crept in unnoticed, who long ago were marked out for this condemnation, ungodly men, who turn the grace of God into lewdness and deny the only God and the Lord Jesus Christ.
All right, verse 5.
Though you already know all of this, I want to remind you that the Lord at one time delivered his people out of Egypt, but later destroyed those who did not believe.
All right, 6 and 7.
And the angels which kept not their first estate, but left their own habitation, he hath reserved in everlasting chains under darkness unto the judgment of the great day, even as Sodom and Gomorrah and the cities about them in like manner, giving themselves over to fornication, and going after strange flesh, are set forth for an example, suffering the vengeance of eternal life.
All right. 8, 9, and 10. We're getting there.
In the very same way, on the strength of their dreams, these ungodly people pollute their own bodies, reject authority, and heap abuse of celestial beings. But even the archangel Michael, when he was disputing with the devil about the body of Moses, did not himself dare to condemn him for slander, but he said, "The Lord rebuke you." Yet these people slander whatever they do not understand, and the very things they do understand by instinct, as rational animals do, will destroy them.
Kevin, you read that.
Woe to them! They have taken the way of Cain. They have rushed for profit into Balaam's error. They have been destroyed in Korah's rebellion. These people are blemishes at your love feast, eating with you without the slightest qualm. Shepherds who feed only themselves. They are clouds without rain, blown along by the wind, autumn trees without fruit and unrooted. Twice dead, they are wild waves of the sea, foaming up their shame, wandering stars, for whom blackest darkness has been reserved forever.
All right, last one.
Enoch, the seventh from Adam, prophesied about him. See, the Lord is coming with thousands upon thousands of his holy ones to judge everyone and to convict all of them of all the ungodly acts they have committed to their ungodliness, and of all the defiant words ungodly sinners have spoken against them.
All right. Thank y'all. We'll stop there because we're not going to get no further than verse 15 today. Some very, very, very interesting stuff. Very interesting stuff in those verses that we just read in Jude. And it's pretty much all about false teaching, false leaders, false buying into false teachers. So let's talk about this right here for a minute. And once again, these I try to make this stuff applicable to us sitting in the room, right? So these headings, this ain't biblical headings. This is John Akers headings, right? On what I think we can get, and we can take out of teaching. So though you already know this, I want to remind you that the Lord at one time delivered his people out of Egypt, but later destroyed those who did not believe. That's something I think Just sit back and think about for a minute. This is his introduction to his false teaching. All the false teaching stuff that we just heard. Remember, Jude's talking to Christians here. Like, it's something that Jude is concerned about, and he thinks that other Christians need to be worried about, right? So he's telling us this stuff for a reason. And he makes it a point to show us something about God right here in verse 5. So who is this talking about? Who did God deliver but later destroyed? Who's that? Israel, right? That's the whole account of Moses and God leading them out of Egypt, going through the Red Sea, and then what happened? What happened after that? Well, I mean, we know this story, right? The Israelites, they seen all the miracles. They were literally led through the sea on dry land, and then they started forgetting. And they complained. They started complaining. They started grumbling. And Israel's a powerful example, because when we read that, we look at Israel and we say, well, how much stuff does it take for them to see to actually like be confident in that God's going to be with them and God's going to take care of them? They've literally seen miracles over and over and over again. And when we read that, and then we see how people who've seen so much forgot, right? That's something we need to be mindful of. Forgetting is easy. It is. Forgetting's easy. You get distracted with life or whatever, and soon enough you'll start forgetting about what really matters if you don't focus. That's one reason we meet here every week, right? To intentionally remember Jesus. But you can get tied up with your lives, and you can forget. Jude, remember his introduction. Stand up for your faith, right? He wants us to be always heading in the direction of God, and willing to stand up for it. This text shows us the far-reaching extent of judgment, I think, right? The Lord's willing to save anybody. We know that, right? He was willing to save Israel, just like He's willing to save us, right? But later destroyed those who do not believe, right? You can't lose your focus. You can't lose your belief in God. You can't lose your faith. That's why we got to keep it in the forefront of our minds, right? God has He has many. There's many things that make God unique, right? Faith, love, but there's also like His severity and His justice that you see in the Old Testament. And that's stuff that I think that we forget about sometimes. We don't talk about it enough. But you can see it right here with Israel. I mean, he saved them. He let them out. But they had the choice, same choice we had. Believe in God or not. Right? And they didn't. And God destroyed them for it. Let's see. So these stories that Jude, these accounts that Jude throws up here, right? He has a point for doing them, right? If God is willing to do this to Israel, what hope does a false teacher have? Yeah. What hope does somebody that buys into false teaching? And you don't believe in God anymore. What hope do you have? You don't have any. Go ahead, Kevin.
Well, it's really addressing the false teachers, but also who's going to be lured away at that time.
Yes.
And that's when you start looking at the bigger picture, you have to have more of a focus on that and not get detoured.
Yeah.
Because it tells you right there, I mean, you will be destroyed because of it.
Yeah. And Jude's telling us this because it's dangerous, right? It's dangerous. We have to stay away from false teaching, false leaders. Stand up for the Bible. Stand up for the gospel when we see that stuff. All right, let's move on. Next slide. There's some interesting stuff in the book of Jude. I find it interesting that Jude and Peter both talk about angels in here. So verse 6 says, angels who did not keep their positions of authority but abandoned their proper dwelling These he has kept in darkness, bound with everlasting chains for judgment on the great day. We learn a few things about angels in this text right here that we don't see a lot of places in the Bible. I'm not going to go down into the rabbit hole of like where they're at right now. That's a whole other Bible study where these angels are at. But here's the thing. Like, this passage leads us to believe that there's angels who once believed in God, who once dwelled with God, who were once there with God, right? And then something. What do we know about angels? We know they have free choice, just like we do, right? We don't know a ton about them. We know they can choose, right? And what did they choose? Did they choose God, or did they choose something else? So
don't you feel they were probably influenced by Satan as well, though?
yeah,
That
maybe.
he lured them, because
Yeah. My dad, if you ever sit down, y'all don't know my dad, but if you ever sit down and talk to my dad, he'll say, if Satan was able to convince other angels to leave God, right, to leave heaven and leave all that, you better watch out, because like if he can convince somebody that's been there and seen that to leave, then you're gonna have a fight. You're gonna have a fight. Anyhow, but angels, I mean, they chose something other than God. Here's the thing: they chose something other than God. And what did God do with that? I mean, God judged them, right? God judged them. He said He chained them up, bound with everlasting chains for judgment on the great day. Right? That's something that should get our attention. Right? We talk about how people have choice all the time. You can see it. I mean, you can see it with other of God's created beings, right? Angels. Same thing. You have to stay on track. You have to keep moving in the direction of God. You don't get to choose. You don't get to choose anything other than God. You got to choose God. Same thing. Like, if God, and here's the thing: if God will do this to angels, right? If God will do this to angels, like angels, I'm pretty sure they're a higher order of creation than we are, right? If God will do this to angels who rebel against Him and don't want to be with Him, right? What hope does a false teacher or a false leader, somebody who buys into the false teaching, what hope do you have? Why you have to be careful, and why you have to stand up for your faith. Why you have to keep moving in the direction of God. All right. My next one says, be aware God judges immoral behavior. In a similar way, Sodom and Gomorrah and the surrounding towns gave themselves up to sexual immorality and perversion. They serve as an example of those who suffer the punishment of eternal fire. Right? It's just pretty heavy with these examples that Jude is leaving us. And once again, conduct, right? What are they doing? What are they doing? Sexual immorality, perversion. We know the story of Sodom and Gomorrah. We've probably heard it 1,000 times in our lives about what was going on there. I think it's a reminder of those who lash out against God, who rebel against God. He has the right to judge. He's God. He doesn't have any other option He's a just God. If that's us, or if we're Sodom and Gomorrah, we're those type of people, He doesn't have any other option than to judge us, because He's a just, righteous God. Ezekiel 33:11, it tells us that God takes no pleasure in judging wickedness, right? But once again, I think as a Christian, as somebody sitting in here in the room today, we have to have a balanced view of God's character, right? There is the love, grace, mercy, but there is the justice. I say severity because you can see it in the Old Testament, the judgment side of God, right? And the Bible tells us over and over and over again that one day He is going to judge the world. We got to be ready for it. I got to stay away from false teaching. We can see clearly, though, those who reject His plan, those who reject Him and rebel against Him. I mean, these examples are being told to a New Testament audience for a reason, right? We need to be careful with stuff like this. Destruction of cities. There's another one. Let's just stay with the same theme. If God will do that to two cities, right? God will do that to two cities. False teachers, false leaders, somebody who buys into that type of lifestyle. What hope do you have? There was I was watching something on the internet. This wasn't part of my Bible study plan. Anyhow, I was watching something on the internet yesterday. What's the guy's name? It's a British story. But there's a story about a British theater in the late 1800s. It's back when everybody went to shows and theater and stuff like that. Back before TV and phones and all that stuff was invented. People actually used to go to shows and sit there, and it was fun. You did that kind of stuff as a family. There's a show in over there in Edinburgh. That was the city, and there was a magic bit that's scheduled at the end of it. Magic show or whatever. And there was a fire that broke out backstage at this theater. Right, fire. And this clown comes out. Clown comes out of the curtain, and he tells everybody you need to evacuate the building. Like, things are getting serious. You know what the crowd did? They cheered and laughed, and they thought it was part of the show. And then the clown gets really serious, and he says, "No, y'all need to get out. Like, you need to get out. Like, smoke filling the auditorium." Everybody just cheered louder. They literally had to get the band to come out and play "God Save the Queen" and play people out of the theater to get them to stand up and leave. There was a guy, I forgot his name, but he told the story once about he thinks the end of the world is going to be kind of the same way. Everybody's just going to be sitting around thinking it's a joke until it actually happens, right? And it's just going to leave a lot of people unprepared or not even believing what's happening when it's happening, right? You can see stuff like that in these Old Testament stories. You can see stuff like Judith. These writers are warning us about this stuff for a reason. We need to take it seriously. We need to be prepared for Jesus' return, not buying into things of the world. Here's my next point. Let's just read it again. In the very same way, on the strength of their dreams, these ungodly people pollute their own bodies, reject authority, and heap abuse on celestial beings. But even when the archangel Michael was disputing with the devil about the body of Moses, he did not himself dare to condemn him for slander, but said, "The Lord rebuke you." This is very interesting, right? You get another little piece of information about angels in the writing of Jude. But what's the point of it? It's about authority. Is the point. Who has authority in this situation? It's not Michael, and it's not Satan. It's God. So Michael, he had every chance to go toe to toe with Satan. When I read this, I kind of want to see a fight break out. Michael and Satan, right? They're arguing about something, and I want to see a story about Michael fighting Satan, but Michael kind of just says, "The Lord rebuke you," right?
Did he not have enough faith in the Lord?
No, it's when I read a story, I'm like, oh, nothing happened. It did happen though, because what did Michael do? He realizes Satan's a created being of God, and he doesn't take God's authority away from God. He leaves it with where it needs to be. He tells Satan, "Lord, rebuke you." Michael's not going to slander or even talk bad about another of God's created beings, which is kind of amazing, right? Because you're talking about Satan, our enemy, here. Michael knows who's in charge, and he defers that back to, he tells Satan, like, Lord rebuke you, not me. God will take care of it. That's something we can learn from. That's something we can learn from in this room today. This is angels, but once again, put it in context of created beings of God, right? Think about how we interact and how we treat other created beings of God sometimes, right? Now, outside, I kind of want to see a fight here, right? That's me reading a story. But would we ever interact like that with other, when we're talking about other people or things? Like if somebody mistreats me or my family or whatever, am I just going to defer that back to God and trust that He's got it and He's going to take care of it and make it work out? Yeah. That's not natural to me, though. It's not natural to me, though. It's part of trusting and growing in faith. Go ahead.
I was thinking about that, what you had said, and I was thinking what I do. I remember my first thought is, no, I'm going to make you hurt. Well, while I'm hurting them, I'm going to have the Bible and be scribing to them.
We got all kinds of thought processes we go through with stuff like that, but we do got to remember. I mean, we've had studies recently about like what's the temple of God right now, New Testament. It's everybody in the room, right? So should we heap abuse on other people or slander other people or even talk bad about other people? No. I think we should follow examples like this right here and defer back to God. Talk to God about it. Let God handle it. He has the authority. He has the authority. We don't have any. That's the thing. It's a surprising reference to find in Jude, but I think we can take that away from it. Like just watch how we're treating each other, watch how we're talking to each other, things of that nature. Let's see. Run out of time. Be aware, rebellion against God never ends well. Right? You get some more examples here. Woe to them, they have trusted the way of Cain. What did Cain do? Killed his brother. Alright, what about this Balaam character? What do we know about him? Go ahead, Sandra. You don't know what we know about him? Y'all gotta quit being afraid to talk.
Donkey told him off.
So that's one of the stories. Talking donkey. That's the story, right?
Yeah.
The talking donkey. But he got Israel to buy into some stuff they shouldn't be believing, right? He led them astray. What about Korah? We see Korah in the account of Moses, and Korah led a rebellion against Moses. He didn't trust in the leadership that God had appointed through Moses. And what did God do with Korah? He judged him. Like literally the earth swallowed him up. That's what happened with Korah. It's more examples of like Jude's hitting hard on this. He's saying this it's warning. It's saying if you buy into false teaching, if you're a false teacher, you lead people astray, you engage in that kind of behavior, this is what you got to look forward to. All this stuff where God judged all these Old Testament characters, right? And I just said be aware false teachers are trouble here. Because this is kind of talking about false teachers are going to be a problem, right? This letter's written to Christians. These people are blemishes at your love feast, eating with you without the slightest qualm. Shepherds who feed only themselves, right? So false teachers are going to, they're going to come in. They're going to eat with you. They're going to sit with you, right? You can't let these small things creep into your families, into your household, into your church, into your life. You can't accept them, right? That's when Jude says stand up for your faith. What he's talking about, stand up for your faith, because false teachers are here. They're real. They're trouble. They're gonna come in. They're gonna eat with you without the slightest qualm. but they only feed themselves. They're not there for you. It's stuff we need to take seriously. There's some references here to some Old Testament books. There are clouds without rain. They are blown along by the wind. Autumn trees without fruit and uprooted, twice dead. They are wild waves of the sea foaming up. Their shame, wandering stars, for whom the blackest darkness has been reserved forever. Right? There's nothing false teaching, buying into it, letting it exist in your lives. There's no point in it. It's not going to result in anything good for your life. Not in anything good for your eternal life. Right? Whether it's in heaven or here on earth while you're living. You have to stay away from it. You have to stand up for your faith. Here's the last couple verses we're going to talk about today. Enoch, the seventh from Adam, prophesied about them. See, the Lord is coming with his thousands upon thousands of his holy ones, to judge everyone and to convict all of them of the ungodly acts they have committed in their ungodliness. In all the defiant words ungodly sinners have spoke against him, these people are grumblers and fault finders. They follow their own evil desires. They boast about themselves and flatter others for their own advantage. Right? So you can see kind of what do false teachers do here. I mean, it tells us they grumble. They find fault in anything. They follow their own evil desires. They boast about themselves. They might try to flatter other people, but it's for their own advantage, right? You ever met people like that? I've met people like this in my life, right? But you have to stay away from them. Like, you can't buy into the teaching. You got to stand up for what you believe in. We should be prepared. Peter told us that, see, the Lord is coming with his thousands upon thousands of his holy ones to judge everyone and convict them of their ungodly acts. That's the point, right, that Jude's making here. God is going to judge this. Like, all this scenario that Jude is painting about false teachers. Stand up for your faith. Stay away from false teachers. God's still in charge. He has authority. We just talked about it. He's the judge. So I want to be on the good side of this, right? I don't want to be one of the people that have bought into some false belief that's outside of the Bible, that's outside of His words. Right? I want to be on the good side of this, and I think everybody else does too. Take that seriously, though, when Jude says, "Stand up, contend for your faith." It's a serious subject. You see, there's some common themes in the epistles in the Bible. It's like, continue to build yourself up. Here's some things that you should work on as a Christian. Stand up for your faith. God's coming back. He's going to judge humanity one day through Jesus. It's a recurring message over and over again that we have to take seriously in our lives. All right, but that's it. Take that. We need to keep judgment. We need to keep heaven, Jesus' return, in the forefront of our minds. Sometimes we lose focus on it, but keep it as part of your daily prayer life, your daily conversations with God. Make sure you're ready for the Lord to come back. Right. The last couple verses of Jude, which we'll talk about next week. Jude's going to tell us a little bit about here's what you need to do. Here's what you need to do next. So, in the meantime, though, just stand up for your faith. Think about these Old Testament examples and some of the characteristics that we've talked about with false teachings and stuff like that. And if we're buying into them, and they're in our families or in our households or anything, we got to get rid of them. All right. We're not going to do this slide the same day. It'll take too long. But I will throw it up there next week. Y'all gave me some good feedback last week about what do you want to study next. What do you want to study next for Bible study? So you give me a lot to think about. So thank you for the feedback. I'll throw it up there again next week. So I want y'all to think about it. I want y'all to think about it this week. What does this group need to study? What do we need to cover, right? I've been picking my own topics. I want to pick something that y'all want to study, that y'all feel like we need to study as a group for our next topic. So I'll throw the question up there again. Y'all think about it this week, and we might spend one more week on Jude and then do like a review, see what we've learned from 2 Peter and Jude, and then we'll move on to a new Bible study. So y'all think about it and be ready to give me some feedback next week.